Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have a very special late night insight video, and it's actually on a fragrance that was gifted to me by a very close friend who is going to be joining us on the channel tomorrow at around 6 o'clock Central Standard Time uh, on Friday, May the 26th. So I hope you guys can join tomorrow. If you're watching this video, please join the live stream. It's going to be the one and only Russian Adam. It's my absolute pleasure to have him on, and I cannot, wait to have him on the channel tomorrow. But he gifted me a couple drops of a very precious fragrance that I've been sitting on for a while, and it's called Aquilaria Blossom. And he sent me this actually weeks, maybe months before Aquilaria Blossom was officially released. And he said, don't talk about it yet because it's not released. You can smell it or whatever. And I didn't, and I just kind of sat on it. And we discussed the fragrance whenever he came on my live stream, and but I never did a full review. And since he's going to be coming on my channel tomorrow, and we're probably going to talk a lot about the new History of Oud collection, I think tomorrow I'm going to make the History of Kinam Oud my scent of the day. I've not worn that as my scent of the day yet, so I'm going to wear that all day tomorrow to office. But I wanted to do this. I wanted to take the time to review Aquilaria Blossom because even though I don't have a full bottle, it deserves its own review. And this is a fragrance that had some connections today. And the reason I started thinking about this fragrance again is I reviewed my very first Arabian Oud fragrance on the channel today called Blue Oud. And Blue Oud is on the Arabian Oud website for 400 US dollars. And I really enjoyed it. I've smelled now 3 or 4 Arabian Oud fragrances, and that is actually my favorite one, Blue Oud. Blue Oud's my favorite of all the Arabian Oud fragrances I've smelled so far. And so since I did my first Arabian Oud video today, and I actually received my first Arabian Oud full bottle, this is called Risala. Risala. So I'll do a review on this once I get to know it. I don't know this fragrance at all. Never worn it. But yeah, it's got little bits and pieces here and there. I mean, nothing exact, but just off of the top of my head, there is a fragrance called Amir Al Oud Intense Oud by Latafa. And there's just from the atomizer, there's a little bit of a resemblance, a lot of saffron and this burnt sugar by the fireplace like fragrance. So I don't know if that'll be my favorite Arabian Oud fragrance, but I did receive my first full bottle of an Arabian Oud fragrance. And so I got to thinking also because when Adam came on my channel last time, not last time, but the first time he came on my channel, I actually wore this as my scent of the day, and it was an Arabian Oud fragrance called Cashmere. And Cashmere is what I would consider to be sort of a fresh take on an Oud fragrance, if you will. It is the last time that I actually wore Cashmere when Russian Adam came on my channel. And the reason I wore it is because I knew I was going to be putting some Aquilaria Blossom on my skin when Russian Adam came on, and I wanted to sort of have another, fresher Oud fragrance on my skin. And basically what Cashmere smells like is it opens up with Japanese yuzu, which interestingly enough, Japanese yuzu plays a part in Aquilaria Blossom. So we're going to talk about that as well. So there are some similarities between these two. I would say this is like the more designer version of Aquilaria Blossom. It's yuzu and blackcurrant and plum, so it is more fruity than Aquilaria Blossom. It also comes across as more blatantly floral. The jasmine and the oud play more center stage. I'm sorry, the jasmine and the rose play more center stage with Cashmere, and also the vanilla. It's much sweeter. So, for me, for this style of fragrance, I was considering a full bottle of Aquilaria Blossom. I never bought one. If one of those 10 ml Discovery atomizers or a bottle actually falls in my lap at a good price, I probably would go for it. Even though it's not my favorite style of oud fragrance, if you know my taste, you know that this sort of fresher, cleaner, if more minimalistic style, which is really Taha style. So Taha is one of Adam's best friends and the owner of Agar. We'll talk about him. He co-produced Aquilaria Blossom with Russian Adam. And I think of Taha as like the Jean-Claude Elena of the oud world, because he likes his fragrances to be very soft and quiet and clean and minimalistic. Okay, that's a word that I would use for him. I actually have reviewed something like I want to say 7 fragrances from Agar. If you go on my playlist, you can select the Agar playlist, and you'll be able to go down and see the different fragrances that I've created. I think I wrote them down somewhere. I'll probably come across them here in a minute. I'll tell you about them if I come across them. But you can go watch the playlist and see my thoughts. And his fragrances smell almost like you're smelling just a pure oud oil. They're almost like just smelling an accord. It doesn't really feel like a full perfume, because he likes to try to highlight the oud itself. And that might surprise people, that there are ouds out there that sometimes very high quality ouds don't smell like barnyard fertilizer stink. They smell sometimes fruity, or sometimes floral, or fresh, and he likes to just highlight that in his perfume and keep it minimalistic. Okay. And so the idea of Aquilaria Blossom, by the way, before we get into the smell, I have to take a step back and tell you that the idea of Aquilaria Blossom, I'm in absolute love with. It is basically the brief of the perfume for a perfume is so simple that and yet it's so brilliant in its construction, and it's so brilliant in its order to the perfumers, which basically they created themselves, so they kind of gave themselves the orders. But you have to marvel, I think, at the imagery as a perfume lover that Aquilaria Blossom sort of creates in your head, at least for me. And just FYI, I have about a 3-hour dry down here, and I just did a fresh dry down right here for about an hour ago. So I've been sniffing this again, and I've applied it many, many times. This is probably the 4th or 5th time I've applied it since having this little, and look how much I still have left to sort of try and play with here. So thanks to Adam for very kindly sending this to me. And so the idea of Aquilaria Blossom, though, the brief, is basically that they wanted to create a fragrance that smells like the blossoms of the Aquilaria tree. And you might ask yourself, okay, well, why is that so brilliant? Well, Aquilaria trees, for the most part, don't have blossoms that smell. They do have small little flowers, I think, that come off of the tree, but they don't really smell like anything. They have no smell. They're basically like a mute flower. And so there's very much room for this artistic wheeling, dealing, creativity, if you will. And if you think back to the idea of, let's say, the fougere, all the way back to the late 1800s by Houbigant, it gives me very similar vibes. Create a perfume that smells like a fern, right? If ferns had a smell. Well, they don't. They don't have a smell. I mean, maybe just a very slight greenness or something, but they don't really have a smell. And Amouage, actually, interestingly enough, they undertook a very similar brief whenever they created this. This was called Opus 9. And Opus 9 was created by Nathalie Lorson. This is a tester, so I don't have the cool little stand, and I don't have you can see it says tester right there. I don't have the nice little cap that goes on top. I've got this cheap little cap, but saved me a lot of money going with the tester, so I really don't care. But this was a Nathalie Lorson and Pierre Negrin creation. And the idea of Opus 9 was basically create a perfume that smells like the camellia flower. And you might ask yourself, well, what's so interesting about that? The camellia flower is mute. So a very similar, I love that artistic-like brief, that artistic-like strategy, if you will. And so this perfume is special for Russian Adam because it was a collaboration basically with his good friend Taha. And Taha owns Agar. And Adam basically credits Taha with giving him the confidence and giving him sort of some tips and advice on getting his brand started. He was the one that told him, if you want to do something well, do it yourself. Don't outsource it. You are the one who distills the oil. You control the process. You all that stuff. And Russian Adam took that to heart. There was one day when we were doing a live stream and someone asked him, "Hey, I really like your perfumer's organ that you have. Where did you buy it?" And he said, "I didn't. I made it." And that's the man that Russian Adam is. And he puts that sort of, singular mindset, that focus, that quality into his perfumes. And if you've ever seen the bottle of Aquilaria Blossom, you'll notice that the cap really stands out. Beautiful cap. And as it turns out, they decided to 3D print that cap from resins. So it's a 3D printed cap of this imaginary Aquilaria blossom. Imagine like the flowers on the Aquilaria tree are like lotus flowers, big plush flower, right? And that's sort of what's sitting on top of the cap. That's what the cap sort of looks like on the bottle. Beautiful little presentation that he made. 3D printed, by the way. So when I smell Aquilaria Blossom, my first question to Adam was, how hard was it to work with someone that basically has completely different taste and style in perfume than you? And he said it was very hard, actually. He said that's one of the hardest. Working with other people is one of the hardest things he's ever done. And he has a collab with Bortnikov coming out very soon, hopefully. Fingers crossed. He's done, collabs with other folks as well. But, working with someone that has almost a direct opposite type taste in fragrance and style as you had to be hard. Even if he credits Taha as almost being like a teacher, almost like a mentor to him. And he said it was extremely difficult. But also, in a way, I was thinking about the fact that Russian Adam and I share similar philosophies on many different things. And one of those things, for my channel, for example, I talk about how I want to go everywhere in the perfume world, right? I've talked about niche. I've talked about designer. I've talked about this artisanal. I consider Agar Aura, Areej Dore, Bortnikov, Ensar, Rising Phoenix. I consider those brands like artisanal houses, okay? The perfumer themselves is usually the one getting their hands dirty, distilling the oud themselves, going and buying real sandalwood and smelling it and, sourcing these ingredients, mixing it all together, bottling it, or they're kind of doing it themselves. They may have help, but it's not like Chanel where everything is outsourced here. Well, Chanel doesn't really outsource, but it's not like Chanel where they have the money and the ability to have a team that does the design and a team that does the bottle and, so forth and so on. The artisanal houses are really sort of one-man shops, if you will. I think of Dmitry Bortnikov, Russian Adam, Ensar Oud, that kind of thing, right? And so I go everywhere. I've talked about niche, designer, vintage, modern, expensive perfumes, cheap perfumes. I talk about everything on the channel. And likewise, Russian Adam says he wants to go everywhere in the perfume world. He will try a lot of different things, he wants to make fragrances using the most expensive, rare, hard to find, limited ingredients, but he also wants to make affordable fragrances in the History of Attar collection, the collection before the History of Oud, which I have a video on the sample set, and I've done a live stream with Russian Adam himself about that collection if you want to check that out. But during the History of Attar collection, there was a fragrance in there that was under $100. He wanted it to be accessible for more people, right? So he has made fragrances that are extremely thick and heavy and resinous, and some called those type of perfumes sprayable attars. And that's sort of the, I think, style that many people associate with Russian Adam. But he's also made these fresher fragrances. He's created his own fragrances himself. He's worked as a creative director and allowed a classically trained perfumer to sort of take his ideas and run with it and create fragrances. And I think that might be something that's coming on down the line. So this fragrance, when it first hits your skin, okay, very first sniff when it hits your skin, if you're wondering whose influence in that tug of war won, Taha or Russian Adam, instantly you will notice from the opening, definitely this is Taha's fragrance style, okay? So this sort of fresh yuzu, orange, white ambergris is kind of what I get in the beginning. Lots of beautiful white ambergris. And actually, one thing I will say is when you first spray this, or first, for me, put some on your arm, dab it on, that white ambergris note is maybe what my brain sort of hones in on. Like, one thing that might surprise people is you're not going to get a huge oud accord right out of the gate, okay? And I think that's the reason why many people dismiss this from the get-go, because they were expecting some sort of big oud bomb, and this is not that at all. Remember, the idea of Aquilaria blossom was to not just talk about the flower itself, but also capture the whole essence of the tree. So one of the quotes that Adam said in a beautiful video he did with Taha when they were talking about this scent is, he said, one of my favorite flowers is neroli. And Taha said, why? And he said, well, the reason neroli is one of my favorite flowers is because it captures all of the parts of the tree itself. So it captures sort of the green leaves, it captures the floral essence of the neroli, but it also captures the orangey aspects of the orange itself, the citrusy aspects of it. It captures the tree perfectly. And that's what they tried to do with Aquilaria blossom. So when you first smell this, you're going to get this, sort of fresh, citrusy. So this is a fragrance that's made up of citruses and resins and woods, okay? So citruses, resins, and woods. And that citrusy element from the very beginning is what sort of takes over with ambergris, okay? It's mixed with mandarin orange leaf, okay? So it's Japanese yuzu, orange, bergamot, white ambergris, mandarin orange leaf. That's the top. So it's a very citrusy experience. It's very fresh. And you might be asking yourself, man, here's the newer dry down. If in that opening, if there is oud there, I almost can't smell it. It's you could put this on someone's skin and they wouldn't think there was oud in this perfume from the beginning. Okay, now remember, this is Taha's opening. It's almost like the fragrance, I think, perfectly captures both styles, and we'll talk about that later on. But one thing I will say, if you like heavy ambergris fragrances, like, for example, if your idea of a fantastic fragrance is Les Indemodables Ambre Supreme with that beautiful sparkling, ambergris accord, check out Aquilaria Blossom, because it takes that sparkling ambergris style in the opening with the citruses, with the resinous sort of undertones, and it's beautiful in the first hour. In the first hour, that white ambergris, maybe even the first couple hours, that white ambergris really shines. It's the star of the show to me, okay? So when you list off the best ambergris fragrances, Atlantic Ambergris by Areej Dore, Les Indemodables Ambre Supreme, Aquilaria Blossom by Areej Dore, you can put this in there with those best ambergris fragrances to my nose. The opening is just beautiful with the ambergris, but it's not what people expect, okay? And I think that's maybe what put some people off, but it really does feel like Taha style. It feels like, it feels like Taha is in control of the opening. And like I said, I have 7 videos on Agar Aura. Here's the ones that I've actually reviewed. And I've reviewed Oud Lubani, Agar Parisian, Queer Chypre, Lao Gold, Nariko, Agar Attar, and Kemar Kinam, which I think was actually one of my favorites. I really liked Agar Aura's Kinam fragrance. I'm usually not a big Kinam fan, but I think because it meshes so well with his style, I really like that Kinam fragrance that he did. I wouldn't buy it, mind you, because it was extremely expensive, but I really did enjoy it. And Agar Aura sort of releases fragrances very similar to Areej Dore. They're very limited availability, limited hot, ingredients, high quality ingredients that are just very rare. And he makes sort of one batch. It's limited. Once that batch is sold out, it's gone. Unless he makes a part 2, sort of like Russian Adam does with, Atlantic Ambergris 1, Atlantic Ambergris 2. Unless he does a part 2, it's kind of a one and done thing. So very hard and tough to come by. So thank you to the people who sent me some generous, very generous decants of Agar Aura fragrances so I could do those videos for you guys. And his style is sort of much fresher and much lighter, and excuse me, and minimalistic. And that's what the fragrance smells like for the first hour or so. And you're kind of thinking, okay, is this it? You know, that's really what I'm thinking as I'm smelling this the very first time is this it? And now that, of course, I know where the fragrance goes, I'm not thinking that. But I remember the first time thinking, wow, Taha style really sort of took over. Where's the Areej Dore style? Where is it? And so what ends up happening is Taha is the exact opposite of Russian Adam, okay? So many videos we do together, Russian Adam and I, we talk about how me and him have, I mentioned earlier, sort of a similar philosophy, but also we have what we joke as having the same illness. And our illness is that we always want more. We're never satisfied. We want more castoreum, more musk, more real ambergris, more oud, more animalics, right? We always want more. And Taha is exactly the opposite. He likes the cleaner. He likes the fresher. He doesn't want the barnyard animalic, smell in your nose when you smell his oud. And Taha's work in the opening of Aquilaria Blossom really gives it this very uplifting opening that will remind you of Taha's other work. Just, you won't get away from it. So much so that, the first 5-10 minutes really enhances the freshness with that white ambergris accord. And again, I really think it's one of the problems that people have sampling fragrances nowadays. It's a problem for the fragrance community as a whole, I would say. Just the fragrance public, you could say, because modern corporations have trained people to basically do this. Nope, or yep, and that's it. And it's spray, decide. Don't even give the alcohol a chance to dry on your skin. You've already made a decision. And this fragrance is really tailored to people who smell the whole fragrance all the way through. And it's not a very long, it's not like a 18-hour beast mode fragrance or anything like that. I think from memory, this thing probably lasts about 8 hours on my skin, give or take, because of the ambergris that really keeps it sort of pinned to the skin. That is one thing that ambergris does really well, is it works as a great fixative. And you can smell the high quality ambergris in this. So where the Areej Dore DNA starts to enter the fray, is, to my nose, the spices, okay? And the woods and the spices start to really kick through. Actually, you'll get a little glimmer of the woods and the spices, almost like a reflection off of the water that you're smelling, that white ambergris, sparkly, water in the top. And you'll get sort of a little glimmer of this, and I'm starting to get more and more of it now that we're at about the 1 hour mark. But if you've ever smelled this, and I'll do a full review on this. I actually did a full review on Atlantic Ambergris 2. Probably a full review of Atlantic Ambergris 1 isn't needed, since I think they're probably 95% similar. There's very little difference, but I'll do one just to have that conversation as well. I wore this to work a couple of weeks back, and I really enjoyed it. So I'll do a full review. And I spray. I took Russian Adam's advice. I spray my fragrances. I'm not as careful as This was like 2 or 3 wears. Look how little of this 10 ml decant I used. Now I'm trying to use this in like one wear. I'm trying to use 2-3 mils everywhere. I'm never going to get through my collection, so I'm trying to spray more and more. I'm taking Adam's advice. And this is beautiful, just layering it on. But the thing about Atlantic Ambergris is there's this spice melange, you could say, in Atlantic Ambergris. So if you kind of know Atlantic Ambergris, it's basically this blend of spices with resins. Very similar, I would say, to Aquilaria Blossom, but it's even more animalic. And there's some even heavier things in there, like Apopanax and Nagarmatha and stuff that you're not going to find in Aquilaria Blossom. But there are a couple ingredients that I smell in Atlantic Ambergris that I also smell in Aquilaria Blossom, and that's just a little bit of cumin, even though it's not listed. I think there's a little bit of cumin in Aquilaria Blossom in the opening, just a touch, almost like, how Jean-Claude Elena, I called Taha, the Jean-Claude Elena of the oud world. But you know how Jean-Claude Elena has that almost spicy, cuminy like opening that flows through all the way from Eau de Hermes, from his teacher Edmund Rudnitska, all the way to Cartier's Declaration, all the way through some of his other creations. Like, for example, if you smelled the opening of Cuir d'Ange by Hermes and the Hermescence line, you'll get that sort of DNA in the opening of before the white supple calf handbag like leather takes over. But you'll get that sort of DNA, that spiced DNA, which definitely you get this cumin, cardamom mixture. I think there's a little bit of that in Aquilaria Blossom. And I also think there's some green notes that are not listed. Maybe pine. Pine is part of Atlantic ambergris. I wouldn't be surprised if there was a little bit of pine or a little bit of fir or a little bit of something like that in there, because there is this green feeling. And they do list mandarin orange leaf. Maybe that's what it is, and I just don't know the smell of mandarin orange leaf, and I'm confusing it with pine. But I do get this pine-like note. But even the woods that start to come in, for example, they specifically use Texas cedar, and Texas cedar is a fresher take on cedar. It almost has this sweeter, softer like side. And it adds this freshness, and that blends beautifully with the composition as well. And so I get a little bit of this Atlantic ambergris, sort of cardamom and pine or green notes that seem to make an appearance, but it isn't as heavy of a wear. It's like Atlantic ambergris light. That's how I think of Aquilaria Blossom. And also, it goes into this resinous side of things that's a little different from Atlantic ambergris, but the construction is the same, and that's where I think when you think about the construction being the same, there's no Agar Aura fragrance I've ever smelled that has a construction like this. So when I think about the construction being the same, even though I think when Areej, Dore, and Taha were putting their heads together, they made the opening that really will remind you of a Taha creation. I think they were sort of working together to give the opening that Agar Aura that Agar Aura smell. But when I think about the construction overall, it's an Areej Dore construction. It's not a Taha construction with a little bit of Areej Dore thrown in. That's where, Russian Adam says he views this as an Areej Dore creation with just a pinch of Agar Aura thrown in. And I think he's right. Even though that pinch of Agar Aura thrown in lasts maybe much longer than I would like, because that's not my favorite style. That sort of fresher, minimalistic, cleaner oud. It's not my favorite. I like the exact opposite, actually. But once you wear this a couple times, I think if you know Adam's work, you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll get so many more facets here. There's frankincense. There is neroli in this as well. There's patchouli. There's some tonka. There's Malaysian propolis. There is myrrh, which adds a little bit of this warmth. And if you look at the color of the juice, it just feels like, it looks like it's a golden myrrh color. There's some vanilla. There's a little bit of castoreum, and there's saffron in the base. And so after an hour or so, when the fragrance cooks on its skin, that's where, an hour to an hour and a half, that's where you're really going to start to notice this much more resinous, undertones start to creep into the fragrance. And that's where you're going to experience more of Adam's work, more of Russian Adam's work. So, this isn't my favorite creation by Areej Dore at all, but I think for the brief that they set out to work together, two people with completely opposite sort of ways they see perfume creation, working together to create something like this, this really, I think, highlights the best of Agar Aura and the best of Areej Dore, and sort of puts it together. And so, even though it's not my style, even though I will not be buying a bottle, unless a bottle I say this all the time, but if a bottle of this fell in my lap for a steal, I would take it, absolutely, because I like the fragrance. I think it would be a perfect oud for the summer. My problem is, like today, for my scent of the day, I actually wore the new History of Oud collection, the history of Chinese oud, to work. And some people would say, "Wow, that is a challenging, hard and it's getting hot here. It's in the end of May, so it's in the 80s. So I wear pretty much anything, anytime. But this, I would say, for a traditional summer scent, Aquilaria Blossom would be a perfect if you wanted to wear an oud fragrance that didn't have that oud accord that you're used to smelling. It's not going to smell like Arabian Oud's blue oud, right? This is the more traditional sort of Cambodian, Indian oud, barnyard, fertilizer chips, that sort of thing. Whereas this is a completely unique composition, and that's one thing that Adam and Taha both stressed is, they've each done their takes on oud in their own brands. This is stepping out of the box and doing something different. So, when I listen to some of the people bashing them for creating this because it's not what they expected, I mean, that is what an artist does. They step out of the box, they try things that are different, they do the ready, fire, aim strategy where they don't calculate every single move. Sometimes they just try different things to sort of get themselves out of the comfort zone and be unique and do different things. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And this is one where I think many people thought it didn't work, but I think it actually really did. I think they hit the nail on the head. You haven't seen me showing off a bottle on my videos because I don't have a bottle. But do I think it's full bottle worthy? Yes. Will I be buying a bottle? Probably not. That's the thing. It's that sort of citrusy Taha style is not my favorite style. But again, it's all sort of price related to me because I would love to have a bottle. But if I'm going to spend $300 on this, I think I would rather allocate that $300 to something else that more fits sort of my normal style that I go for. So, if you've had a chance to smell Aquilaria Blossom, I would love to hear your thoughts. I know this video was a little bit longer than my average late night insight video, but this fragrance deserves it. And I hope you guys can come on and join the live stream with me tomorrow evening, Friday evening, with Russian Adam himself. Get your questions ready. He is always he's an open book, and he loves talking about some of the things that he's learned. So have your questions ready. I'll have some ready for him, of course, but it is going to be a fantastic live stream. We hope you can be there. So cheers, guys. Thanks everyone for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.